Hello, we're at the Arctic360 annual conference, and I am joined for a quick chat with Paul Barrett, who is the Chief Communications Officer for Davie Shipbuilding.
That's absolutely
Welcome.
right. Thank you very much. It's fantastic to be here.
Well, you just came off a very long panel conversation that was so informative, really good exchange from the panelists on stage, good questions from the audience, a lot of thought-provoking dialogue of where we go and what we do next. Before we get into some of that, Paul, why don't you tell our viewers who don't know anything about Davie Shipbuilding who you are, what you do, and then we'll get into the role that Davie Shipbuilding plays in the Arctic.
Great. Well, I'm Paul Barrett. I'm the Chief Communications Officer for Davie Shipbuilding. Davie is the largest shipbuilder in Canada. It's been continuously operating since 1825. We've built well over 700 ships in that time. For the past 70 years, we've been building and maintaining ships specifically for the Arctic. So those are known as ice-breaking ships. Mm-hmm. And the very exciting and interesting thing is we're now part of Canada's national shipbuilding strategy, and we'll be building an entirely new fleet of some of the most powerful icebreakers in the world, 7 of them in fact.
Amazing, and can't wait to see what those will look like for sure. I'm sure I've seen some of your ships on your website.
They're very beautiful, actually.
Yes.
Beautiful. A lot of red and white.
Yes.
You see the colours of the
Yes.
Coast Guard.
Yeah.
But because they have a particular shape to the bow of the ship, which is designed to allow them to push through the ice. So they're quite unique. And very, very strong and very heavy, right?
Right. So you were on the panel this morning that we focused on multi-purpose, multi-user critical infrastructure.
I was,
That
yes.
was a mouthful to say. What is Davie Shipbuilding? What's the role that Davie is playing in that initiative?
Well, I think a really big and important role, because I think the ships that we're building are effectively floating bridges of infrastructure.
Love that.
So they have a multiple role to play, and they're also, while we wait for ports to be built, or roads, or airports, or airships, or whatever else it might be, we need to have assets that can go into the Arctic and actually help to supply, to potentially take opportunities to the northern communities, to help with the issues of sovereignty and security by having a continuous presence in the Arctic. And this is important for Canadians, but it's also important for Canadian allies and all countries who care about sovereignty and security in the north, given the geopolitical situation that we're facing just now.
Absolutely. What are some of the challenges that you have to face, especially now as you're building these new ships and with the, putting them in place, or just challenges overall in general in terms of the
shipbuilding
infrastructure?
Shipbuilding is a really difficult business because it's about taking very large pieces of metal and lots of kit and information and putting that together is actually extremely difficult. You can't email it. It's not just a service that you provide as a software. So that's difficult in itself. The other thing that's difficult is making sure that we have the infrastructure and facilities and processes ourselves to ensure that we can deliver the ships that Canada needs by 2030. That's also incredibly important. And we're about to embark on a $500 million redevelopment of our facility in Lévis in Quebec.
Okay.
So we're going to be doing that, and we're going to be building those ships, which is very difficult because they have to be very strong and have very thick steel that's done in a particular way. The other challenge is really how can we make sure that the procurement process that we work very closely with Canada in is as streamlined as possible to ensure that we can meet Canada's deadlines. Okay. So Canada needs these ships because the current ships are very old and they need them at least one very large ship and another ship, the program icebreaker, by 2030. So if we're not able to do that and work so we can meet our deadlines, then it means that there's going to be a strategic gap for Canada in the Arctic. So I think those are the main challenges that we face at the moment.
And you and I were speaking earlier this morning, and you also mentioned it on the panel. Let's talk about decarbonization and, you know, everyone working towards those targets. What does it mean for Davy?
It's huge. I mean, decarbonisation overall, and particularly in maritime transportation, is a massive problem and a massive issue. And Davy is looking at market-ready solutions and things that can be brought to the market as soon as possible, as opposed to just moonshot solutions which aren't going to be helpful in the short to medium term. And what we're doing at the moment is in terms of our operations, as we build the new facilities that we're going to be building, they'll be very sustainable and use all green construction techniques. That's something that is really important. And then we're also working with University Laval and others on a series of R&D projects which are looking at, for example, the potential to have green ammonia as a potential renewable fuel for powering not only the ships that we'll build, but existing ships that can be potentially retrofitted to be much less harmful to the environment. Mm-hmm. So this is really, really important. And we're also looking at electrification solutions in the ferries that we're going to be building as well, both for Canada and then potentially going forward for the province of Quebec.
That's wonderful. I can't wait to see what you do with all of that. It's not an easy task.
It's really not easy at all. Yeah, exactly. But you know, the other thing is it's really important that we don't get stuck on when we hear about electrification, we hear about hydrogen, and we hear about lots of these other solutions, that we say that's what we want, but it's not implementable, because in the end you still need to run the ship or run the asset or run the building or whatever it might be. So absolute commitment to decarbonisation, but also very pragmatic in the solutions that we follow.
Right, and the due diligence behind it.
Exactly.
So I want to switch gears a little bit here and talk about Arctic360, the reason why we're here. And first I want to talk about and say thank you for your support of Arctic360. Davy Shipbuilding is a big supporter of this initiative. And in fact, Davy has sponsored for the second year now the Indigenous Youth Program. And tell us why.
Well, and we're really, really proud to be and delighted to be doing that. I think fundamentally youth, and specifically Indigenous youth, is going to define the future of the Arctic. I mean, that's something, and as a company that's building assets that are going to be, you know, serving the communities of the Arctic for perhaps half a century, really important that we understand that. I think the other thing, it's really about Davy developing more meaningful discussions and relationships also with the Indigenous communities today and into the future. And that's both in the Arctic, but it's also across Canada, wherever we have a community that we serve. And I'll give you the example. I spoke earlier about the major redevelopment of our facility that's going to be going on very soon. Well, we spoke to our communities within Quebec, the Indigenous communities within Quebec, to make sure that the historical significance of our facility, which has been there for hundreds of years, was actually not lost in terms of how we're going to develop this, and that's been a very fruitful discussion, and we hope to continue to develop that both within Quebec and obviously within the northern communities as well.
And we spoke a lot about that yesterday. It was pretty much a general theme at times regarding engaging the youth and engaging Indigenous people in the early onset of discussions of planning and strategy, right? Instead of
100%. And I mean, for me and for us, it's really, they're going to be defining the strategy and then they're going to be executing it. So we need to put trust in them. We also need to realize that they're also a potential source of opportunity and innovation and entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
And that's the other thing that we really need to be grabbing hold of. That it's not just a case of providing support and service, it's actually how can we turn that around to make sure that the northern communities and the youth of today are the business leaders and the entrepreneurs of the future that go beyond the north.
Yes, yes, and we're going to hear from some of those youth later this afternoon.
Okay.
Just to wrap up, I would like you to give us your input or your opinion on Arctic360 and why it's a think tank such as this, Canada's premier think tank on the Arctic, is important.
Well, I think fundamentally Arctic360 defines the debate around the Arctic. It's not following the debate. And the reason I say that it defines is because it brings lots of different groups together. I'm from the private sector. I've been on a panel with public sector and government officials. We have a range of other people coming from academia. We've got entrepreneurs, as you've just mentioned. So I think that's quite unique, and it's a recognition that the solutions to the Arctic need to be defined by the Arctic, by the indigenous communities, but also bringing in lots of other interests that can either provide capital or provide political support or cultural awareness or whatever it might be. And I think that is what's really unique about Arctic360, where you compare it to other Arctic think tanks and definitely here in Canada. They define the debate, they don't follow the debate.
I love that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support of Arctic360, and I understand you're going to be doing another sponsorship next year.
100%.
Amazing, amazing. We love to hear that. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. And
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.
Okay, great.